Alrighty.
Hey, we
How are
haven't
you?
said a word. Well, I guess
Yeah,
we said
no,
hi.
yeah, we
Remind me,
mentioned-
was
yeah.
it Kevin? It's not Kevin, right?
Austin.
Austin.
And remind me your name?
Jamie.
Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Are you a student here?
No, I am a recent graduate of the College of Worcester.
Where's that?
I was
Is
talking
that
with
around here?
David. College of Worcester is all the way up in Ohio,
Oh, okay.
but I'm from Atlanta and I'm working in Atlanta.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where in Ohio was the College of Worcester?
In the town of Worcester.
Worcester.
Yeah, Wooster.
Is that like near a city or something?
It's an hour south of Cleveland.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. I went to school in Ohio. I went to a really small school called Cedarville University.
Yeah, I've heard of Cedarville. Yeah.
Really? Have you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no one's heard of Cedarville.
Yeah,
How
I've
funny.
heard of Cedarville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got my master's degree at Kent State, but that was remote. But anyway, so
Okay.
like both of my
Okay.
colleges are in Ohio. So that's
Yeah.
nice. Cool.
I'm semi-familiar with
Nice.
Ohio.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
feel like Cedarville's such a small town.
It is
so,
it is
yeah.
small, very small.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, here I guess you may have heard that last talk or whatever. Like, do you know what we're doing, or do you want me to explain?
Just explain.
I'll explain. I'll summarize. So we are out here asking people just about things that they believe in. I think that sign says like what is true, or what do you believe is true, or so we're asking people to identify something that they believe strongly, and then we just kind of want to explore why they believe what they believe.
Okay.
So if you have, like, if something comes to mind, like, if something you believe and you would like to explore it,
Yeah.
go for it.
Okay. I'm not gonna spin off of hers because oh snap, that's the mic.
You can if you want. I mean, you can do, if that was like what you wanted. I honestly didn't hear that talk, so I'm fine. I'm fresh. But if you want to do something else, no worries. Whatever you feel like doing.
There's so many things.
Some people do.
Spiritual.
Well, today we've gotten a lot of political stuff.
Political? Okay.
Sometimes we do stuff about, like, I believe in God. Some people, like, I've seen some people talk about ghosts. I've seen people talk about aliens.
Okay.
Just things, like, sometimes conspiracy theories. Like, it can just be things that aren't evidently true that they believe are true in some way.
Okay. All right.
And if you...
All right, I got you.
Okay, you got it? Okay, I was like, we can also try other things to
the
jog
70s
something.
was the worst time period for Black people.
Okay, the 70s was the worst time period for Black people.
And I can go several different perspectives on that.
Just to hone in on that, are you talking about in the U.S.? Are you talking about in the globe?
I'll say in the U.S.
In the U.S., okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How confident are you that that's true?
Very confident.
In the U.S. On a scale of like 0 to 100, like if you put a number to it.
0 to 100.
100 being like, I have no doubt in my mind, it's completely true. 0 being like, I don't believe it. I guess whatever 0 is.
I'll give it a solid 85.
An 85. Okay, cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Solid 85.
So, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here.
No,
I'm a little new at this, so bear with me.
This is a new experience for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get through it together. So, the 70s was the worst time for Black people in the U.S.
I'm honestly not as shocked.
So why do you believe that's true? Like, what's the main reason you have for believing that?
I feel like this is...
Oh my God, are you okay? I don't know how that happened. Her shoe just fell off.
Oh, wow.
Oh, poor thing. I've done that before. That sucks. At least she's okay.
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
hope so.
Yeah.
She's not embarrassed.
I don't even
to
know.
say she...
Has it? Well, honestly, this is a little high. Also, her shoe, that's what it was. It caught. It's funny, her shoe just came off. I don't think she's wearing shoelaces, so that's one problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is high as well.
No, her
Not to
shoelace-
blame the
they're-
victim.
yeah. Not to blame
But
the
yeah, I've
victim.
never seen Converse just come off like that. I was like,
That was unique. That was definitely unique.
glad she's okay.
Put that in the video.
Say what?
I told her we wouldn't put that
Oh.
in the video.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Okay, so where were we? We were saying 70s was the worst time for black people in the U.S., and then I
Yes.
asked you why. Like,
Yeah,
what's
why?
a reason?
So this was the main point. So this is after the death of Martin Luther King.
Okay.
And this is where mainstream wealth for black people was becoming more popular.
Okay.
And I felt like this is where the black community started to devolve and break apart.
Okay.
So for instance, right before Martin Luther King got assassinated, he was going to lead the economic revolt.
Okay.
Against, I guess, the U.S. economy.
Okay.
So I ultimately believe that's why he got assassinated, because I felt like the government knew that he had that much power in the black community to say, if he's going to lead that many people who already contribute that much, I don't know the numbers behind it, but I knew the black community at the time was already a significant contributor to the U.S. economy, that he was going to lead this many people that already gave them civil rights, which was already a huge deal at the time, to economically revolt from the most powerful economy in the world at the time. It probably still is. Oh no, we can't have this happen. And I ultimately, I mean, he was about to do right before he got assassinated. So yeah.
So then, when he was assassinated, you're saying in the 70s things got worse because of that?
Because of that, yes.
Okay.
So right before he got assassinated, there was a document saying that he was still alive after he got shot.
Okay.
He died on his passing to the hospital.
Okay.
And he had a quote that will forever be in my mind, that he said, "I've led my people into a burning house."
Okay. Wow, yeah.
So I feel like he knew that the social integration, actually, let's rephrase that question. Integration was the worst thing that ever happened to black people.
Oh, okay. Instead of the 70s, so integration.
Yes.
Okay.
Integration, but integration happened in the 70s.
Okay.
So,
well, that's fine then. Yeah, we're refining it. So yeah, like the 70s was worse because of integration. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying that. I feel like we should have social integration, cultural integration, but economic segregation.
Okay.
And that's what Martin Luther King was trying. Well, that's what I think he was trying to do.
So he was saying, like, we're going to withdraw from the white economy.
Yes.
And, okay.
Not saying that me being friends with you is a crime. Me marrying a white person, or a black person marrying a white person.
Yeah.
That should be allowed to happen. And I already have thoughts on that anyway. But economically, black people integrating with the larger U.S. economy has not helped us in the long run.
Okay.
Because there was a famous businessman, a black businessman in L.A. He was running a real estate business. I keep forgetting his name, but he knew that white people wouldn't do business with him because he was black.
Yeah.
So he hired a white man to be the white face for his business, while he was calling all the shots.
Okay.
While it was his money, it was a white man going to all the clients, making all the business deals.
Okay.
They ultimately found out it was a black man running this business. Mind you, there was nothing illegal about it. It was just a black man was the CEO.
Yeah.
And they locked him up for it.
Yeah.
And because of that huge case, ever since the 70s, that's when black people were officially allowed to have more than $1 million in their bank account.
Oh, okay.
Which is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So it's like black people have only allowed to have more than $1 million legally for only like 50 years. 56. Well, we'll just say
whatever it is.
We'll just say 50
I think
years.
It is about 50 years actually.
So 50 years we're only allowed to have wealth.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
That there's still the stigma for black people to say, pull yourself by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
While everyone has had so many years ahead of us to accumulate billions and billions of dollars, while we've only allowed to be true economic participants for only 50 years.
Yeah. So you say integration is the worst thing to happen. So are you defining that as like the fact that Black people did not economically withdraw in
yes.
the 70s? So you're saying like the lack of, it's almost like, is there any other way to, is there any other way you think Black people should have withdrawn, or are you just thinking about economics for this claim?
I'm mainly thinking of economics, but we can talk about with several different industries.
Okay.
For instance, the sports and entertainment. Mm-hmm. The largest music category is rap and hip hop, mm-hmm. which has been historically dominated by Black people.
Yeah.
But that's a white-owned industry.
Yeah.
Black people have little to no say of how we operate that business other than creating it.
Yeah.
But we don't specifically own it, which is sad. Mm-hmm. And also with sports, the biggest money-making sports in this country, in the U.S., are football and basketball. Mm-hmm. Predominantly Black participated sports.
Yes, yeah.
So, and also with college sports, the most profitable college sports are football and basketball. Uh-huh. There's a whole category in college sports called the Power Five.
Yeah.
Those are the most profitable, largest football conferences, which is mainly in the South, and these are mainly Black-owned or Black-participated sports.
Okay.
So those are just two ways, and even if we go even more further back in history, Black sports, in terms of quality and broadcasting, was very much on par, or if not superior, to mainstream U.S. sports. So the Negro Leagues and also HBCU football was on par or superior to the NFL at the time or the MLB at the time.
Okay.
But because we always perceived that white-owned businesses are better than ours, we always had this inclination to participate and go bigger and better.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them for thinking that, because Black people are a minority in this country.
Yeah.
And there's more white people than Black people. That's just right. So yes, if I were to participate in a white-owned business, more people are going to see me. So this is a bigger and better.
Yeah.
But if we're just thinking about dollars-wise, it was on par or superior.
Yeah.
To that at the time mainstream sports broadcasting. So it's just like we've lost sight of our community, because we always wanted to participate and integrate with the larger community outside of the Black community, which is great, and I very much encourage that, and I very much want that to happen. But we've lost sight of joining arms with each other, because of the effects of integration. We've lost sight of participating with Black people, like even now.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. One of the things with this is I'm wondering, so when you say like it was like integration was the worst thing for Black people in the U.S., I guess that's sort of the claim. It was like the 70s and the integration; those are the same thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think the implication there is you're kind of saying things are bad now for Black people. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, I would say yes.
And you think that's why? So you're saying
yes, that is why. Because we don't.
Or like you're saying, things are economically worse than they would have been if this hadn't happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we have our money's constantly going out.
Yeah.
Like, this is just a fact. Like, back to the previous conversation, the data shows that the Black dollar does not circulate, I think, probably only once in the Black community. While as with the other communities, like the Asian community and the Jewish community, a Jewish or Asian dollar will circulate 14 times
Okay.
before it goes out to another.
How do they measure that?
I do not know.
Okay.
But that
because it's not like literally a black dollar or an Asian dollar.
No,
yeah. So I'm kind of curious how they know like this one.
But even still, like, black people spend the most out of any demographic in this country.
Yeah.
And yet we're historically the poorest demographic in this country. So it's like, how do we have? So we have the money.
Yeah.
But why are we so poor?
Yeah.
And why are we not investing it in our own communities? It's pitiful.
Yeah. And you think this, so I'm wondering why, like, you're tying this to the 70s and Martin Luther King.
Yes.
I wonder if that hadn't happened, what would be different? Like, what if Martin Luther King had not been assassinated? Do you think it's still possible that we end up how things are now, or are you just like, no?
I think things will be very much different. I very much agree with that.
Okay.
But just thinking of it from an Afrocentric collectivist standpoint, like, and just seeing other, how can I say it? First of all, I agree. Things will be very different. We probably wouldn't be having this conversation if he wasn't assassinated.
Why wouldn't we be having this conversation if he wasn't assassinated?
I feel like...
Well, obviously we wouldn't be talking about him being assassinated, but other than that, why would we not?
Because I feel like people have more allegiances to their own communities and not necessarily... People wouldn't be as inclined to explore other communities.
Oh, you think people would be more segregated in a way?
More segregated. Oh, okay. And I'm not saying we should be segregated.
No, I know. You're just describing what it would be.
Because, like,
but economically,
my money, economically, my money's not tied to you.
Okay.
Because I know that.
So you're saying, like, I guess the way I'm thinking of this is if black people are buying from black people, they're keeping the money in that community.
Yes. And that way we can stockpile our own.
And it sounds like if black people are buying from black people, some black people will be richer, but not necessarily all, though, right?
Yes.
Because some would still not be, because you can't, they're not giving
exactly.
the money back, I
no,
guess.
Yeah, exactly. No,
okay.
Everything you said, point on. And, like, for here in Atlanta, for example, like, Sweet Auburn Avenue, that was a huge contributor on why Atlanta is considered the Black Mecca of the world, because there were so many Black entrepreneurs in the Sweet Auburn neighborhood, which is only a couple blocks away from here.
Yeah, I parked on that street.
Yeah. And if you look at it now, he's like, I wouldn't live here.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why there's a whole highway that was built through it, because no one had ownership or equity in that place, because all the people that had the power or the equity in that place left. Why did they leave? They integrated with the rest of the society. And I don't know if those people that were wealthy then are still wealthy. Their family members are wealthy now, but...
So when we say, like, this the lack of economic integration, I guess, of white and black communities, you're saying that's a big contributor to why things are the way they are now. You maybe even say the main. I mean, I'm kind of playing with your claim a little bit here.
No, play with it. Definitely.
So do you think there's anything else that contributes to why, like, what would be like a second reason things are the way they are now? Do you think there's anything else contribute to that, or is it only
there's
that,
a lot of things.
Okay.
I would say our traditional anchor points have been lost, specifically the Black church.
Okay.
Even back to the civil rights movement. The Black church, our spiritual worship grounds, were huge anchor points for our communities, whether if it was Islamic, Christian. Those are predominantly the main religions that I know of are in the Black community, but those were anchor points for our community. They were hospitals, they were schools, they were daycares. That's where people got education or learned how to get education to uplift themselves individually or uplift themselves as a community. And that's where we put our money Like, we'll invest in the church. That way we can get more resources and more services that we wouldn't necessarily get from the greater society, whether it's the cities or local government.
Yeah.
So
how would one implement economic integration or economic segregation? Like, how would you stop black people from buying from white people or white people from black people? Is it okay for white people to buy from black people? Or?
I think, mind you, I think spend your money where you want to.
Yeah.
But for instance,
I'm curious, like, how even Martin Luther King would want to implement that, you know?
I'm sure there's documents or historical. I know there's probably evidences of how his plan would go. I know there's definitely documentaries on this. I've seen it as a child. I can't quote them right now, but I'm definitely sure if I were him, I just wouldn't shop at mainstream white businesses.
Try to buy from black businesses if they're doing, selling the same thing. Got it.
And like, that's where I'm not sure if you're aware, that's where this notion of support black-owned businesses comes from. That's, we as black people need to buy from black-owned businesses so we can get a sense of community and black equity again. Because we had so much momentum and power in the 60s, and it just went down the gutter in the 70s. And because we ventured outside of our communities, we lost our anchor points. And the anchor points that are still prevalent in our community, aka the black church or our worship grounds, are not contributing as much as they should. And I also think this sense of prosperity gospel is not helping black people at all.
The prosperity gospel is, remind me what that is?
It's just saying, because you're working so hard, God is going to give you $1 million tomorrow.
Okay.
Give me a break.
That
is not how it works. Because you are faithful to God. You're going to be blessed tomorrow. There's this short-term transactional stigma behind prosperity gospel.
What I'm curious about is how this just like occurred to me.
Oh, go ahead.
So if like Martin Luther King's looking at this situation and he's like, white people have a lot of money, black people don't have as much money. Correct me if I'm simplifying it, but correct me if I'm saying it wrong. And so his idea is, let's keep our money within our community. But if one group has more money as a community and one group has less, how does keeping it within the community, doesn't that just mean they still have they still have less money at the end of the day, right? If there's no interchange. So I'm wondering how do you see that? How do you see that money growing if it's just kind of staying in the same spot?
No, yeah, I hear you. That's a good question. That's a very good question. I know that, I perceive that because black people contributed so much to this country from an individual standpoint, I believe that if we were to have more cultural ties and more economic segregation, we could have caught up to the mainstream white
like
economy.
Even before the 70s, you mean? Or?
Even before the 70s,
okay.
Yes. So I'm not saying that we should have complete segregation. No, but I felt like there should have been more economic segregation because black people invented the security camera, the light bulb, the traffic light, the water gun. We've contributed so much to this country, and yet we are so poor. That doesn't make sense to me. And whenever there was a black leader that said we need to economically segregate and support our own before we help others, why did they just mysteriously die? Crazy. That doesn't make sense to me. So why, like, whenever I see a black successful person, and I'm very happy that they are, but there's always a band of white people owning their actions. It's just like, what if that was a black person or more black people in his circle that have more say in that person's actions or what they do or what they say?
Yeah.
I felt like we as black people would be a little bit more respected in this country.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just frustrating to see that we've done so much from a historical, economic, cultural standpoint.
Yeah.
And yet we get zero credit for it.
Why do you think that is? Like, why?
Ooh-wee.
Loaded racism, right? I guess. Yeah,
like that's a.
Well, I'll like.
Go ahead.
When I see this claim is, and I think I'm nitpicking your claim, so I don't mean to do this.
Go ahead.
But when you say the 70s was the worst time in black people, I'm like, but what about the 1770s? Like, what about, I think you're not.
1770s?
Like, what about slavery, I guess? Like, I think you're not, I think you'd say that's worse, right? Or would you not? Like, I'm kind of curious. I'm like, maybe I should ask. I'm assuming, but maybe you would say, no, this is worse. Like, what do you think is
worse?
Yeah. Would you say slavery is worse than that, or?
No. I don't think slavery is worse.
Okay, I'm glad I asked because that's interesting. Okay.
Mind you, slavery was terrible.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a sexually, mentally, emotionally,
everything.
spiritually abusive time period.
Yeah.
For black people.
Yeah. So you say the 70s and the integration is the worst time, and you point to the economics of the situation as why as evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think slavery was better? What do you think about it? Because to me, I'm like, well, I know you can back up. No, you're fine.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This is all. I like thinking about all different kinds of things. Like, to me, like, I think economics was worse for black people during slavery, right? They didn't know anything, right?
No.
So
what you said,
what makes you think what?
I say it's worse.
Yeah.
Because we had the opportunity to grow.
Okay.
And we shrunk.
Okay, so you're like, we were right there. And
we were right there.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
We folded.
Yeah.
We folded like a piece of paper.
Okay.
While as with slavery, we had zero opportunity.
Yeah.
We had nothing.
That makes sense. So there's like that. There's an element of like, oh, how would I say that? Like lost hope or something, or it's like you're
that's exactly is it
like your hopes are dashed? Like,
I asked this question to a lot of people just to hear their viewpoint. Is it better to be that close to a gold medal or that close to a bronze medal?
Yeah.
It's like, well, as with the gold, you're almost first place. You're like, oh, I was almost the best.
Yeah.
While as with almost getting bronze, meaning I was almost awarded something.
Yeah.
And while as with black people, I felt like we were that close to bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're down the rankings.
I wonder, so like, I am curious though, like I'm coming back to that one question of how, if one group has less money than one group, and then they just completely wall off, how do they ever get more money? Like, won't they just always have less?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like historically you should ask the Mexican community. I feel like they mastered the art of being separate, and yet they're still slowly but surely growing themselves.
Why do you think that is?
Because they have community.
Okay.
They just know that, like, okay, we immigrated to this country, we have nothing.
Yeah.
But we're going to buy this house. We're just going to cram 20 people into this small little house.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to contribute their 2 cents to the mortgage. Everyone's going to work this blue collar job. It's terrible, but it's a sacrifice for the next generation. Okay, the next generation, they all have a house. That is the first step to generational wealth. Then they can use that down payment to buy a bigger house.
Yeah.
And that slowly appreciates over time.
Yeah. So is there anything that would make you more sure that the 70s was the worst time? Oh, how about this? I don't like this. I like this question better. Is there anything that would make you less sure? Like, what would make you, like, kind of, like, you're at an 85 now. What would take you lower down that scale? Like, what would make you less sure that integration is like so important for economic success. Or lack of integration, sorry, that segregation is so important for economic success. Like, what would make you less sure that that's true?
Just so I understand your question, can you just re-ask it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
It's kind of tricky. So I'm kind of asking you, like, you're saying that, I have to get it straight in my head too.
No,
you're saying that
we'll figure it out.
That economic success for Black people would be better if they were segregated. Yeah, so they would. Yeah, you know, I need to figure out my own question, and I'm asking you what would make you less sure. Like, why? Like, we talked about how. We talked about like lost hope.
I'll from whatever question is like.
If it inspired something, go for it. And I may be able to circle back to it based on what you said.
Yeah. I'll say historically, there have been more places in Black meccas of wealth before the 70s than now. We don't know, other than Atlanta. Atlanta's losing its edge of being the Black Mecca.
Yeah.
But back then, we can pull up several accounts of towns and cities being Black, or even neighborhoods like Tulsa, Atlanta, California, even some parts of Detroit, were the Harlem Renaissance, like in New York. Like, we had cities and neighborhoods that were historically known for being Black meccas of wealth.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore. Like, period, the end. They don't exist anymore.
Do you think those started going away after in the 70s is what you're saying?
Yes. Like, that's why I was like, we could have continued building on what we had.
Do you think there's any other, like, here, I think I found a question or a different way to ask it. Do you think there's any other reason those went away besides
integration?
Yeah. Is there other explanations for why that happened?
Okay, obviously the system and how America has always historically been, it would never allowed it to exist for extended periods of time.
Okay.
So that's why, like, if you listen to the Black community, they're like, oh, like, the system's against us, like, we were never meant to win. I was like, that's, like, yes, the system has definitely played its part. There are definitely policies and politicians that have played their part in reducing the Black wealth or the prosperity of Black people in this country. For sure. I would be ignorant as a Black person who wants to be wealthy. It would be very ignorant of me to not acknowledge that.
Yeah.
However, it is very disheartening to see demographics of people that have been here for less than we have and have catapulted themselves ahead of us in the economic trajectory, if you will.
Okay.
So it's just like, yeah, the system has affected them just as much as, I'll say the system has definitely played their part in stifling their growth as much as our growth as well.
Yeah.
Yet we've been here longer.
Yeah.
And we have nothing.
Yeah.
And they have something.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. So the system can't play that big of a part.
Yeah. Is there anything we can see, like, I try to think of, like, testing things, you know, and getting data.
Like, that was a good question. I had to think about that one.
Is there
pull that card out.
I wonder if there's anything we can see. Have you ever, like, seen, do we have examples, I guess, in history of communities that have been segregated and that have succeeded really well financially?
The Asian American community.
Okay.
Post-World War. Oh, even during the World War, even before the World War, like, even, like, whatever time period they're building Mount Rushmore, like, Asian Americans have historically been treated like,
yeah.
Like, they were basically slaves at that time period, too. Probably not to the extent as Black people, but they definitely, I'll definitely say this, the Asian American community definitely had their due diligence done on them.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Asian Americans. Like, they mastered the art of, we're gonna mess around and find out, and if we get there, we get there.
Yeah.
and they definitely have done their part. Like, Asian Americans, even in tandem with the black community, like, in every black community, one of the most things we spend is hair products. Who owns our hair products? Asian Americans.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's why it goes back to what I said. Every industry that is tandem with black participants is owned by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
Not a damn. Like, there are no black people in ownership of it.
Yeah.
Black hair products. They'll start off as like, for instance, is it As I Am or Marielle's? Marielle's? Sorry, I can't hear you. I can't read lips. Sorry, my fault. My Ellie's. Okay, so like, even that was a black owned product, and it was historically like I used it a lot.
Yeah.
I ain't black owned no more.
Ah, okay.
Damn. So even like stuff like that, like,
how does that happen? How is it not black owned anymore? Did they sell it, or?
Yeah, we give it away. We always, like, everything about black people, we've always given it away.
Yeah.
Whether that's a spiritual thing, a cultural thing, we are givers to a fault, to a flaw. We give away our culture on TikTok. We give away our music. We gave away the N-word. We've given away our hair, like, our creativity, our inventions. We've given away everything. Our money. Mansa Musa, the richest black man that ever walked the planet, he just walked across the desert and just gave away all of his gold.
Yeah.
Like, we give, and we never keep.
Yeah.
And the system has taken advantage of that. And I'm not saying, as I said before, the system has done its part, but we as black people, we never capitalized on our God-given gifts.
Yeah.
As a people, and we've always, I felt like we as black people got distracted because of the 70s. They're like, oh, I can integrate with that white thing that I never had.
Yeah.
Or historically never had.
Yeah.
Let me go see what it's like to live in a white neighborhood. Oh, I can put my black child in a predominantly white school.
Yeah.
Oh, I can send, my kid was always going to Morehouse. Now I can send him to Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, that's cool and all, but, like, even our HBCUs, like, outside of Howard and Spelman, they're not nationally ranked schools.
Yeah. So how would you test this? I think we've talked about this a little bit.
Go ahead.
But it sounds like, how would you test to see whether it's true that integration is going to help the black community gain more prosperity? Or, sorry, segregation. I keep using those interchangeably.
No, go ahead.
So let me say this again. How would you test a claim that, like, says segregation will help the black community prosper economically? How would you test that?
Well,
because I think if you tried to implement that, that would be a really big step. So maybe it's something you'd have to test first, to see if it's going to be.
Well, I'll just say this. This is going to make me sound so terrible. For instance, interracial marriage.
Okay.
Black people will interracially marry into another race, predominantly white, from my perspective. I don't know the numbers. But from my perspective, it seems like black people are going outside of our race to find romantic partners. If you find love, you find love. Nothing wrong with that. But there's a tandem with that. You're going to be more inclined to spend money in white neighborhoods or with white businesses than not. And that's why there's a historical context of why the black woman would be mad at the black man for marrying a white woman.
Yeah.
You're not actively supporting black people if you do that.
Yeah.
Unless that is a more Afrocentric or Afro-conscious white woman that inclines you to do that.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like if you are interracially marrying, you're going to be more prone or inclined to spend money that is not in black areas.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But that's just my thing.
Yeah.
But mind you,
It sounds like, how would you even, like, if you, let's say we gave you the power to like implement this policy tomorrow, like how would you even like implement that with that sort of situation?
I honestly wouldn't gatekeep on that.
Okay.
Because that's, if that's your affinity, like, I'm not going to say you have to marry a black person.
Yeah.
There's too many people around the world for that.
Yeah.
But I feel like we should be more culturally conscious of what that means.
Okay.
And economically what that means.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that people should or should not do that, but I'm just saying, let's just be a little bit more culturally conscious when we make that romantic decision.
Yeah.
Just think about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it should sway your decision whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I was like, just know what that means.
Yeah.
Because it just, like, and it goes back to my main point. It's just like, it's painful for me to see black people integrate culturally and economically with surrounding cultures, and yet we're giving ourselves, our money, our everything to other cultures and communities, and yet we're purposely neglecting our when I say our own, I'm referring to the black community.
Yeah.
It's just very frustrating to see that. And yet when we have these black people in power or have the money to do really great and beautiful things, they act like they're not black anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like you reach the threshold that a lot of black people wish they could, and yet you do not open the opportunity to give back. And that's also very frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say integration always hurts us, because and even in my family, like, as my family, and we have really cool people, really cool black people that have done great things, like they're doctors, they're politicians, but the more they promote, go up the corporate or whatever social ladder, the less Afrocentric they get.
Yeah.
The more they hate on the things that have been culturally black.
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't say openly hate, but they view things that have been historically black with a more pessimistic view.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why are we neglecting and we're hating the things that you are? And it's frustrating to see it even now. Like, we have plenty of wealthy black people, even here in Atlanta, and yet they don't want to be associated with their blackness. Like, even with the previous conversation, like, what did you say? I forgot.
The one right there? The one you guys were having that conversation?
Yes. You said something that was beautiful. And it was when we were talking off camera.
I feel like we had like 7,000 different conversations.
Yeah, we did. It was layered. But it's just like, why are we...
Can you think of any other... So, like, you're proposing, like, that segregation means that that black people will become more economically prosperous. Can you think of any other strategies that could result in, like, economic prosperity in the black community?
Unless the black church takes seriously to neighborhood development, community development.
Okay.
Because that's something that has always culturally been an anchor.
Okay.
Like, it still exists today. Like, black church culture has stayed the testament of time, through slavery, Jim Crow, all of that. Even during the Civil Rights Movement, like I said before, it was an anchor in our community. It still is an anchor today.
Yeah.
Yet it holds zero, from my perspective, very little economic
independence?
And I would say independence, but contribution.
Okay. How would they go about... How would the church, like, increase the prosperity in the community?
Yeah.
Or any church? Like, does that happen in the white community? Like, how would that happen?
I don't know, like, off the top of my head that there's a white church
true. Okay,
that does
so,
that. But mind you,
yeah, I guess not.
I would say historically white people have been more collective. So, and I know church is a big meeting place for them.
Yeah.
So that might have happened off record.
Yeah.
Because they are tied to a church. So that might happen. From my knowledge, I do not know.
Okay.
But from my perspective, there's a church here in Atlanta called New Life Church. They are trying to buy property in their surrounding neighborhood, which is Candler Park, a very historically lower income black neighborhood here in Atlanta. They're buying property to create affordable housing.
Okay.
So they're going to be building apartment complexes to help seniors.
I like that.
Whatnot.
So it's like a social program they're running, basically.
Yeah, they're so people in the church will donate money to buy property around it so they can develop it.
Oh, nice.
To put the members in the church, which are predominantly black people.
Yeah.
Or other people in the surrounding Candler Park area, which are predominantly black people, into these properties that they are buying and redeveloping.
Okay.
Simple thing is that. Property ownership. That is owning real estate has been the blueprint for American wealth building.
Yes, that's a big form of it, yeah.
Big form. And they trying to expand like education, like getting your welding certifications, like even like as of now, like reports are saying that blue collar jobs are going to be the next thing that are going to be another wealth building tool. So how can we prepare the next generation of people to get those education, to get that education to start building that wealth, to buy property and do all those things. So that is a thing that's what I know the black church can do, because black people have been donating billions of dollars to these big old black churches. And yet the church will be a freaking big old $1 trillion campus. And yet the surrounding neighborhood it's not giving back. And the surrounding neighborhood is just a bunch of ghettos and hoods. It's like that doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
And it goes back to what I said before. Black people have we economically have the money to do really great things within our own community, and yet we constantly just give it out to somewhere else that is not as productive.
Okay.
And it's to me that's frustrating.
That makes sense. Cool. Well, I think we've like explored this pretty well. I guess my question is at the end is the claim was in the 70s. The 70s was the worst time for black people in the U.S. because of integration, and you were at an 85. Has that increased or decreased since talking through this?
The more I talk, I would say, I would say if that's increased to a solid 87.
87, nice. All right, 2-point increase. Like
a 2-point increase, but it just shows that the more I talk, and the more you ask questions, it just shows us like we as a community, we black people, have the ability to uplift ourselves, to pull ourselves out our bootstraps, even though historically we couldn't. We have the power, we have the people, we have the intellect, we have black women are the most educated demographic in the world. Like we have the people, we have the intellect, we obviously have the money, we're just spending it in the wrong places. To do some really cool things. And yet deliberately we choose not to because we're not united as a people. And when we do integrate, because we're integrating so much with other cultures, we're not uniting with ourselves. And yet it's just a whole bunch of individualistic attempts to create this thing called the American dream. And
that makes sense to me. Well, thank you. This was I learned a lot. Thank you.
No,
I'm
very glad I could help people out.
Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thanks, Austin. That was great.
I think we're good.
Did you have any questions?
No, I think that was great. We had a shift. You were able to recalibrate your confidence based on the conversation, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, nice.
Can't get much better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
No,
was great.
likewise.
Great
Likewise. It was a great conversation. It was fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are doing this.
Yeah, thanks for stopping and
Yeah.
participating.
Yeah, of course.